Morning. My name is LaTease Rikard, and I am a domestic violence survivor. I married my sweetheart, my high school sweetheart, when I was 16, and he was the first and only boyfriend I ever had, and he turned out to be a violent man. Now, to answer your questions, and we had two kids, of course, and one of them is deceased at this time due to my oldest child was born with type 1 diabetes. Actually, his pancreas never worked from the time he was born, and he was diagnosed at 9 months old, and he took insulin all 23 years of his life. Alrighty, you ask, what is domestic violence? Well, I could give you a textbook answer, but I won't. Domestic violence is anytime your intimate partner, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your wife, significant other, decides to control you by beating you, or financial violence, I guess, or maybe financial abuse, or withholding money from you, or emotional abuse, talking bad to you and making you and humiliating you, making you feel bad. Criteria for those types of violence is interesting because as a victim, you're not thinking of what constitutes criteria of domestic violence. Case in point, my ex-husband would beat me just because he felt that it was a way to keep me in control. He feared that I would leave him for another man, and well, I left, but I didn't leave him for another man. But an ability or the need to control another human being so as to make you feel bigger or better about yourself. I'm going to pause this. How do you recognize domestic violence? If you're trying to find out what domestic violence looks like, and it's a friend of yours, a family member of yours, the way to recognize it really is a person who is probably doesn't talk much. Maybe their personality has changed a little bit since they were married or got married to this person. Maybe you don't see them as often. Maybe you see her cower down to him in public. Things like that. They're subtle. Most times they're subtle because abusers know that what they do to their spouses or girlfriends or husbands or wives is not socially acceptable. So, of course, since it's not socially acceptable, they're not going to exhibit those types of behaviors in public. Now, you ask, how is domestic violence dealt with? From a victim standpoint, you just try to live every day without dying. From an law enforcement standpoint, you know how the law is. If you break a law, someone has to see it or report it, or there must be substantial injuries or damage so that they can justify locking someone up for doing something. But if you're slick like a lot of abusers are, my ex-husband was one of them. He never, I can't stand this glare on my glasses, but he never showed it in public. Okay? He was very good. He's very charismatic, and that's what you'll find in the personality types of abusers. They're very charismatic. But he never showed it in public so as to tip anyone off. Okay? Law enforcement hopefully will lock them up if the violence is bad enough. Most of the time, what you read about and hear on the news is domestic violence. It's probably been going on for years, and then it culminates in a murder-suicide or a death of the victim or children. What causes domestic violence? I don't know all of the causes, but personally, my ex-husband, his father was that way toward my ex-mother-in-law, and after that, his new wife. So my ex-husband grew up in a household with it. And hurt people, which is real. It's real talk. That's my thinking of it because I know from my experience that's what happened. You said, how do people get involved? How how does domestic violence affect a person's mental state? For me, it affected it and impacted me for many, many years. I did go and seek therapy. I sought counseling with a professional that specialized in that type of malady, if you will. And she was also faith-based. So it was really an ability, or really I was able to use what I knew about God as a child and try to hold on to something that was very solid in life, because I felt I was on a slippery slope after I left him. I went to therapy for 18 months, and I'm glad I did, because it taught me a lot about myself, and I was able to come out of my shell more and just accept me for what I had already been through. I highly recommend it if you can get the right counselor. These days, it just seems like people are so inundated and they're so overworked and underpaid, and they hear it all the time, so they don't really take the time to deep dive into a person's feelings and emotions. And that's sad, because a woman or a man who's been victimized doesn't need to be victimized again by the system. And you do suffer through things called post-traumatic stress disorder. I had a conversation with my page members recently about that, because for a while after I left my ex-husband, while I was going through the divorce, I would have nightmares. I would wake up in the middle of the night just screaming and be asleep while I was doing it. And my younger sister would wake me up and ask me what was wrong, and said, you know, you were just screaming, as if someone was doing something to you. For many years, and I still don't do it to this day, I do not sit with my back to the door of a restaurant. These days, I just do it out of habit, but in the past, when I first left him, I was afraid that he was going to sneak up on me and harm me, because he kept threatening to do so. He stalked me. It was uncomfortable, and it was scary when I first left. So that's real. On a person's relatives, what does domestic violence have? What effect does it have on a person's relatives? I don't know. My family was different. My family is one of these families where they don't talk, don't tell. That's the secret that's hidden and never talked about. Me, the way to get saved, helped, cured, whatever, I had to talk about it. Yes, I had to talk about it. That's the only way to get better, to get healed. You have to let it out. You cannot hold it in. My mom's side of the family never wanted to talk about it, because it was the ugly, dirty thing that had never happened in our family before. My father's side of the family, I wasn't that close to them when I was younger, but just knowing them the way that I know them now, we would have talked about it, and I may have healed differently, or it might not have taken me so long to heal. I would probably be married again, because I had an outlet of support. My brothers and sisters here are very, very supportive of me, and if I were to sell hot dogs on a corner, they would support me. So you definitely need support. It's difficult to move on from a domestic violence relationship once you do get out of it, because you're afraid. You fear every person that wants to date you. I remember for the longest time, when I did start back dating, if the person I was dating, we might have been just in a casual conversation, and they raised their hand to scratch their head, or, just made a move that I felt was aggressive. And really, it might not have been an aggressive move. It's just that from where I came from, it was an aggressive move. And for a long time, I could not. I would jump, I'd be with people, someone I met, and I would just jump. Scary, yeah. And it just makes it hard to move on, because other men will like you and care about you, and you have been hurt, and they don't know how to deal with that, because from a male perspective, men are designed to protect us and to fix things. That's what men do. So if they're with a woman who's broken, they don't know how to fix that, okay? They don't know how to fix that problem. I think your name is Estefani Chavez. Thank you for this opportunity for sharing my experience with you. I appreciate it. And I'm going to shoot this over to YouTube right now. My name is LaTease Rikard. I currently live in Florissant, Missouri. I'm 56 years old, and I am a domestic violence survivor. I have a Facebook page. It's called Domestic Violence Survivors. We're pretty engaged and active, and I'm pretty protective over my people who are members. I don't publish posts outside of the page normally, unless it's something that was in the news. I do not post personal things that people talk about their own situations. Thank you again, and have a great day.